This is Business Day Television, and welcome to Business Week. Every Monday, roundup of important economic developments in Nigeria. As usual, with me in the studio is Lolade Akinmurele, who is editor of Business Day, and of course, Business Day's chief economist, Dr. Adeosun, who is joining us from Abuja. We have a very interesting lineup of matters to discuss today, from the exit of Nigeria from the grey list to banks in Nigeria doubling down on solar power for their branches, as well as the matter of how Nigerians are dying decades before their peers around the world. But before we get into today's conversation, first, the major news items from around the world. Nigeria recorded $50 billion worth of crypto transaction in 1 year, according to the Director General of Nigeria's Securities and Exchange Commission. Dangote is to raise $5 billion for the expansion of the giant refinery in Lagos, according to the CEO of Afri-Exim-Bank. Nigeria is wooing global investors to its solid minerals sector, where it sees significant opportunity for return on investment. On the foreign scene, Cameroon has clamped down on opposition as tension rises over the presidential election of last week. US, China are seeking to ease trade tensions as Trump continues his tour to Asia. And in Argentina, voters handed President Javier Milei a crucial victory in mid-term elections. Now to the matters of the week. So, Lolade, I'll start with you. Nigeria has exited, along with South Africa and I think two other African countries, the grey list, the global list of countries that are not doing well in terms of transparency in financial records and transactions. What does this truly mean for Nigeria?
Good question. So yes, as you rightly said, we've exited the Financial Action Task Force grey list, which essentially just means that, we entered that list in February of 2023, more than 2 years now. And typically what it means is that the country was under close monitoring by the FATF, working with government officials to ensure that certain gray areas in terms of movement of capital, is clarified, because we had some issues with money laundering and the likes. So that's what it is. So now that we're off that list, it means that the flow of capital would be easier. I know that we've been struggling to grow our FDI significantly. Part of the reason why we've had that lag, is also because of, the list that we're on, which essentially just spooks investors. So with that sorted now, it means that we'll start to see improved FDI. If you look at the sectors that will benefit the most from this, it will be banking and trade. And that's why it's no surprise that most of the reactions that we've seen since Nigeria was removed from that list on last Friday was from people like the CEO of Pega, for instance, Mr. Tayo Obiosu, who has really cheered the news because it just reduces the cost of moving capital, from across the world into Nigeria. So that's really a positive. It would impact FDI, but not only FDI, it would impact diaspora remittances as well, because the cost of moving funds, like I said earlier, has been a little bit expensive because we've been on that grey list for the Naira. So it's a really good one. Kudos to the agencies, the government agencies involved, from the CBN to the NFIU to the EFCC, because they've been working with the FATF in the last 2 years that we've been on that list to just essentially get us off the list, and the results of that good work has come to bear now. with the final removal. So it's positive for us as an economy and for the currency as well.
Thank you. Dr. Adeosun, I know BusinessDay has on its front page today a photograph of the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister for the economy, as long as with the Internal Affairs Minister and the President of the FATF and a senior official of the group as well. At the meeting where it was announced that Nigeria was being taken out of the list. So this, and then of course we saw a statement by the central bank over the weekend. We saw another statement by the Nigerian financial fraud unit. So this must be a very big thing, Adeosun. How big is it for Nigeria that we are no longer on
Thank you
list?
so much. Thank you so much. First and foremost, let me say congratulations to Nigeria. We must celebrate every piece of good news. Again, a lot of hard work has gone into this outcome. We must also appreciate all the relevant government agencies that have stepped up and have done the needful. This is not just about regulatory housekeeping. It's about money, cheaper money flowing into Nigeria again. Also, like Lolade mentioned, when you are grey listed, it means that there is significant weakness in your anti-money laundering. But also, it also means that you may not have robust or strong counter-terrorism financing systems. So it means on two fronts, we are working hard to mitigate or reduce or eliminate money laundering and also counter-terrorism financing systems. So you will see that this also have implications for illicit flows to, terrorists and other people playing negative trends. So there will be a multiplier effect, not just on inflow, but also on security. Let me also quickly add there that, when you have the status of being on the gray list, it means every international transaction involving Nigeria was treated as higher risk, and it was more heavily scrutinized. So when something is higher risk, what that means is that you get loans at a higher interest rate. So that's more cost for everybody. And of course, when the rubber hits the road, everybody will feel the pain. Let me also drop here that the International Monetary Fund, that is IMF, has estimated that when any country is gray listed, it can lose foreign capital inflows equivalent to about 7.6% of their GDP. So just imagine we've been losing 7.6% GDP for the last 2 to 4 years that we have been on this list, because investors will hesitate and money becomes very, very expensive. So all the stakeholders are happy, and rightfully so. The government of the day is latching on, because the government is framing this as a validation of broader economic monetary reforms under the Tinubu administration, and the message is we are rebuilding credibility. And thankfully, you can also see correlation between what the Cardoso regime has been doing with return to orthodoxy and doing things by the books. If I have
Okay, it appears as if
I have a few more things to say, but let me defer back to you, sir.
Thank you very much. We are having a flurry of very positive news about Nigeria. And as Dr. Adeosun said, I think it behooves on us when each time we hear a good news that we celebrate it. In my view, what we have seen here is a multi-government agency approach to dealing with this problem of grey listing.
True, I agree. I mean, it just goes to show that we're working more as a team. A lot of people have always wanted to see better coordination from the multiple government agencies, and we're saying that. So it's really kudos to all the agencies involved, really, because it was a lot of work, I can imagine, because it's not easy when you're listed on that grey list and then you get out in less than 3 years. So it's good. Kudos to us.
Fantastic. I was saying a while ago that BusinessDay had on its front page today a photograph of the Minister Wale Adeosun along with his colleague in Internal Affairs. That's a good sign, faster pace than it has done in the past few years. All right. Now, another matter that I'd like to take very quickly, and we must give credit to those that credit belong. The Guardian has on its front page today a story that said that 767 of the 774 local governments in Nigeria do not have websites.
Well, and the exchange rate liberalization that just gave an extra bump to federal allocation. So not having a website, I mean, they've survived without that for this long, but I think this is the time now for them to really get their act together, because if you're getting extra cash in the magnitude that they're getting, then it's only natural that there's better transparency, because people want to ask questions. They want to know exactly how the funds are being deployed, and what better way to find out than getting the information from the websites of these agencies. So if it doesn't exist, it's such a shame, really, and it's something that cannot be sustained. It shouldn't happen going forward. I think they need to get their act together and just ensure that there's better transparency, because that's the only way that you even give confidence to Nigerians, especially given that, you also have some tax reforms that will be implemented next year. We'll be paying more some people will be paying more in taxes to the government, and there'll be more questions, because this is a time where the government really needs to strengthen the social contract with the people, and you can't really achieve that if there isn't sufficient transparency. So it's quite an anomaly. It's shameful, really, that we've gone on for this long, but I'm hoping that things will change in no time.
Dr. Adeosun, I mean, I feel quite appalled by what is happening in Nigeria, at least at the local government level. If it is the case that 767 local governments have no websites, it means that of the 774 local governments, only 7 have websites. 7 out of 774. In fact, I'm lost for words.
Kudos to the paper that published it, but just to also mention to our listeners, we also published something around this October 20, which was just last week. The local government's conundrum: high revenue, low impact in Nigerian council. So our listeners may also check through our online portal to read that. And in that particular work, we articulated how the local government are not doing enough. And for example, we articulated that significantly we have quite a number of local governments. To be specific, Alimosho, Ikeja, Amak in Abuja, Port Harcourt, Kana, Bade, Benin, Kebbi. We highlighted the top 8 local governments in terms of revenue. We also showed some of their key projects and some of the developmental impacts. It will interest you also that in that particular article, we highlighted the fact that Ikeja local government has an online portal. Ladies and gentlemen, you won't believe it. When did they launch this portal? Just 2023, just 2 years ago. All right. But the good thing is, since 2 years ago now, relatively, with respect to Ikeja local governments, you can now track some projects online, and they are able to also get some level of feedback. The truth is, Lolade has said it all. You see, online visibility means more transparency. Somehow we know that opacity, sort of supports corruption, aids corruption, and people are afraid to be brought out to the open. They know that once people know, it means even the local government, any citizen of the local government who is even in diaspora can begin to ask questions. So the fewer people know, the better for people who don't have honest intentions. I look forward to citizens, making a request that all local governments should give us websites. And also, of course, just to also put that out, the website should now not become another bogus project that among us insane amount of money will be earmarked for portals that a few thousands of Naira can do. But that's the way to go. Absolutely, that's the way to go, sir.
Thank you very much. So, Lolade, what I think this is really interesting. We're going to come back to this matter quite a number of times because one of the things that we promote is financial transparency. And in fact, we think that not only should we canvass that local government should have websites, that their website should also be active, they should be live. Their website should have should have answers to the key questions that people will ask. And at some point, there should be a ranking of the websites of the local governments just to see how good they are. But let me ask you, what precisely, why is this an issue, and what precisely should local governments who as yet do not have websites, what should they immediately begin to do?
I think they should start putting plans in place to have one because, like we've said, it's important because it breeds transparency. You can't expect to be, it's not convenient for Nigerians to know that, the local governments are getting much more money from federal allocations, and it's not clear what they can't see that cash translating into benefits to them, to their lives, whether it's in terms of investment in infrastructure, healthcare, education. These are not things that should be left to only the federal government. The local government is closer to the people and should play a more active role. So, they need to start by just building these websites. It doesn't take forever to do that. And then just ensure that it's properly fed with the right information, the frequently asked questions that people might have, and just something that ensures that, where they can be held accountable by Nigerians anywhere they might be. Because, if you have a website, it means that anyone, anywhere around the world can just easily go there and then verify information and check to see exactly how funds are being deployed and the projects they are undertaking. I think this is just basic. It's an evolution that has been waiting to happen. And I think right now we have the right environment to really canvass and advocate for this to happen really quickly, given the fact that they are receiving more funds. I've been emphasizing that is important. They're receiving much more funds, and then there are more questions asked today more than ever as to how those funds are being utilized.
Let me get a bit provocative here. Is it the case that the local governments don't think about being accountable to the people simply because they don't even work for the money? They gather in Abuja every month, collect the money, or wherever it is that they gather, collect the money, and then, as I said earlier, vanish into thin air. And Nigeria, there is no attempt at generating internal revenues, and so they probably don't see themselves as being accountable to anybody.
Yeah, precisely. And Nigerians don't take enough interest in local government elections.
Precisely.
So that's another thing. So sometimes they feel like it's not Nigerians who elect them anyway. They're just selected.
9 trillion naira in 3 years is a lot.
It is. It's a lot of money. So I think another thing that we can do as citizens as well is to start to pay more attention to local government elections, because if we did that, then it would be one of the ways that they go around campaigning. Transparency, saying that I've got a website, all of the way we process our funds, the way we utilize the funds that we get is all available on the website for people to go and easily verify, and that can become a tool for campaigning in the future.
So what do you do, Dr. Adeosun? What do you do to local government?
If I can say it this way. One, you can't say a website is mandatory. It's not a legislative or a statutory.
Yes, requirement.
It's common sense. Permit me to quote Bamboo.
Yeah, but common sense is not very common in Nigeria.
Yeah, but trying to make common sense, it should be visible that is the way to go. But let me quickly, piggyback on this. Don't forget that some of these local governments, what is their level of education? And by level of education, I don't even necessarily mean a degree. Even when you say school sat, what
quality of the school certificate?
Did they finish the school SATs?
Yes.
Do they have 5 credits? Are they literate enough? I mean, numeracy and literacy. Talk less of IT literacy. I can assure you that even if we somehow force or coerce them to set up this website, there will be capacity issues. How many local governments today have an IT personnel currently on their payroll that can manage a website? Two, how are we going to be sure, apart from the initial launching of the website, which will be done with pomp and pageantry, how are we sure that on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly, up to date, up to minutes information will be uploaded?
Yes,
These are some of the issues.
I get you. I get you. I think we have.
State government are struggling.
I get you. We have to go on break. There is one more. There's one more laughable statistics that if you look at the 74 local governments, only 23% of them have internet connection. I know you will laugh your teeth out here, but let's take a break and we'll be back. Please don't go away. Once again, welcome to Business Week on Business Day Television, a weekly roundup of important economic developments in Nigeria. Before we went on break, we were talking about the exiting of Nigeria from the grey list, and we also spoke about the not so pleasant revelation that only 7 of Nigeria's 774 local governments that receive about 3 trillion naira every year have websites. Now, as we go on, the banks are doubling down on the application of solar to powering their branches across the country. UBA took a very significant step the other day. We know that Sterling Bank has, for some time now, been powering its 20-story headquarters on solar. So it appears as if everyone is feeling the pinch of the option, or what do you call it, band A or band 1 or band B. So even the banks are beginning to see
Fidelity, Stanbic IBTC, and Sterling Bank, and we realized that combined they spent about 143 billion on energy costs in 2024. And
143 billion.
Yeah, that was up from about 59 billion the year before.
So it's gone up almost 3 times.
In 2024, yes. So
and that must be because of band A.
Precisely. So I mean, it's important that so it's no surprise for me that there are a lot more banks now seeking aggressively to just transition to solar energy because they're trying to cut off some of those costs, just bring it down. UBA, for instance, I went into a partnership with Renewvia, to
a Norwegian company.
Yes, to pass 25 branches.
And that would be a pilot.
Yes, because they would extend that to 50 branches that cuts across 18 states. If you look at UBA, for instance, I mean, same problem that they've had in terms of energy costs just rising. It's become, I think in 2024 they spent about 50 billion alone. They accounted for a large chunk of the total figure I gave earlier. So it does make sense that there's this transition happening. Banks are trying to just ensure that there are ways of reducing their costs so that they can boost profitability, especially given that interest rates are beginning to come down. The normal drivers of revenue for them is tapering a bit. So it's important that they start looking at how to
cost is a major driver. I must say that the banks are not trying to do ESG. It's not about environmental sustainability and governance marketing at all. Even though it will help them from that front, that perspective. If energy costs are doubling year on year, profit compression will follow. It will impact on the profitability, on the top line, on the bottom line, and the interest of the shareholders will be compromised. So solar is a margin protection strategy. Let me put it that way. There's also this second order effect, if I can use that expression. Banks build internal expertise in financing and deploying solar for themselves. So because they are now even using solar directly, they can now even better market or fund and finance solar projects.
So we're talking about physician healed thyself here.
Yes. So this energy transition by the banks is now becoming a banking product. So it's a two-edged benefit. They save costs internally, then it can turn to a revenue source for them. Okay, so it's not just an energy transition, they are living it. Solar is not just CSR, it's a cost of survival strategy.
Interesting.
Okay? And it will lead to a new lending vertical. So it's a win-win both ways.
Let me ask the question here. Why has it taken the bank so long? I mean, to see the advantage in switching from grid power to renewable power. I know that Lolade has spoken about the moderation in interest and, of course, the benefits arising from high interest rates to the banks. But is there also the affliction that has afflicted a lot of homes in Nigeria and businesses as well, whereby you have rackets in the home, the migad at the gate, and then at the office, the procurement people whose interest it is just to keep the diesel flowing endlessly. Lolade, you are smiling.
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Adeosun, go on.
Let me come in here.
Yeah, come in, please.
Let me say that the cost implications is not just electricity from NEPA, since there are different service providers now, but you understand what NEPA is. It's not also just diesel.
Okay, but why did it take the bank such a long time? Why did it take the bank such a long time? Yeah. Okay, millennials.
The maintenance.
The maintenance, the parts. Don't forget that anything that is dollar denominated has gone up. And all these diesel engines, petrol engines, you need to service them. You need to change parts. All the costs have gone up. All right?
Yeah.
So, again, on a national level, you will realize that. Let me read these statistics for us very, very quickly. All right? In first half of 2025, Nigerians imported roughly 242.68 billion worth of solar panels. And this is 17% higher than 2024. Yeah. So, like you alluded to, sir, all Nigerians are now more cost conscious. It's just like the way some private car owners too are converting to CNG.
Yeah, but the point that I'm making that
one more thing, sir.
Yeah.
Indulge me, sir. Respectfully, sir. You will also realize that the profits from the bank that could be alluded to Forex is somewhat reduced. So they need to save more costs.
Yes, I agree.
The revenue sources are being minimized.
I agree, but I'm trying to get to a point that both of you are trying to avoid. I have seen data that suggests that about $3.8 billion of diesel in Nigeria every year is not accounted for. $3.8 billion of diesel. Diesel that probably was never paid for, or that was never, procured, that paid for. Diesel that was procured and stolen. So, and I'm asking the question, is it that everywhere we all have been captured by the diesel racketeers in our home, in our offices, and in government departments as well? That's the point that I'm making. Why is it taking us such a long time to get to the point where we are doing something about a huge leakage in our pockets, whether it be at home or in the offices? That's my point.
Yeah, I think we've just naturally gotten to that point because that leakage in the pocket, you've got less money in it now, and you're more conscious of how much is in that pocket. So you can't afford to continue going the route of wastages. So, I mean, for the banks, like Dr. Adeosun pointed out, it's also not just, is it the case that the fact that interest rates are moderating means that they would see some decline in their income. it's also the case that the cost of servicing the parts of those diesel engines, those diesel generators, is dollar denominated and expensive.
Yeah, I agree.
If you look at the exchange rate today, it's much, I mean, compared to what it was in 2023, you've seen about 100% decline. So they need to start thinking more about sustainability, thinking about how to cut costs, and the only natural way to do that as it relates to power is to transit to solar, because there's so many examples out there, companies that have made that successful transition and are able to save huge amounts of money from that regard. I know I saw a report by the IMF at some point for Nigerian, no, it was Fitch actually, on Nigerian banks. I said that if they can fully transit at least half of their branches to solar energy, they can save the industry can save 100 billion per annum. So I'm sure they're looking at those same numbers and asking the question, why is it taking us this long to do this? But, now is a good time anyway, better late than never. So I think that's why we're seeing that, and the expectation is that it would even continue going forward.
Okay. For the banks that haven't made the transition or are still encumbered by the diesel racketeers in their procurement departments, I think they need to free themselves from the yoke. And for homes, once I was in a conversation with a very prominent Lagosian, and he said that this particular day, his guard had an issue back at home in his village, and he traveled. And so his driver chose to stay overnight to be at the gate. And at 12 midnight, they had a knock on the door. I won't buy diesel. I won't buy diesel. I won't buy diesel. And the driver went to call his Oga and say, there's somebody here. I don't know whether you sell diesel. He says he wants to buy diesel. And by the time they interrogated the fellow, they found out that every evening he came around to take 1 or 2 jerrycans of diesel that the man had bought to be used. And this is not an isolated experience. I have spoken to many other people in Lagos who also alluded to having been scammed by their domestic staff as well. If this is happening at home, you can be certain it is happening at a larger scale in the offices, and I dare say even bigger scale in government establishments. Anyway, let's move on to the matter that became a lead story matter on Business Day on Wednesday of last week. It is a fact that Nigerians died decades before their peers around the world. Simply put, the expected life of a Nigerian is shorter than that for most other countries. I think, in fact, the data suggests that only one country in the world has a shorter life expectancy than Nigeria.
Then the global average is 72. So you see that Nigerians, we're well below when it comes to average life expectancy.
Is it what we eat? Is it the diesel we smell or steal? Or what's going on?
It's a combination of all of it, because if you look at it, the cost of living in Nigeria is quite expensive. The cost of food compared to these other countries, you find that food inflation in Nigeria is perhaps one of the highest when you compare to the other countries that we surveyed. So that's another thing. So that most Nigerians don't have access to a very healthy diet, and of course that takes a toll on their health as well. And if you look at our health infrastructure, the healthcare facilities and all of that, we're also home to the country where we're also home to the highest rate of maternal deaths in the world. So these things they go hand in hand, really. And I think it's a pity, because we've been stuck at around 54 now for the longest time, and not much seems to be happening. Even though with other countries, smaller African countries like Rwanda, for instance, they've been able to grow their own average life expectancy significantly in the last 10 years, just by the right leadership, significant investments in healthcare, just ensuring that because it's important that we, as government officials, understand that you need to invest in human capital for you to get the kind of desired economic growth that you're seeking. And you can't do that if you're not investing in healthcare facilities, you're not investing in education and on all that. So healthcare is a big deal, but I don't think we've taken it seriously as our life expectancy would suggest. We've not taken it seriously, really. We need to really start to take that seriously and see how we can improve those numbers, because without that, then we'll just keep going around in circles, and it would be a really huge mess for us if we don't address that. because it's important for economic growth. It is.
Dr. Adeosun, I mean, we tend to focus on GDP figures, inflation figures, MPC movement in rates, and all the other things, exchange rate. I don't know. I mean, are we working on an economy for the graveyard, or we are working for an economy for people who we expect to believe in? I'm not sure you're hearing us, Dr. Adeosun, who's joined us from Abuja. But Lolade, again, let me pose a question to you. Are we just, working tirelessly for an economy for people that we expect to be living, or for a graveyard?
That question is a tricky one. If you look at it, for all the hard work that we do, Nigerians are not lazy. I know that there was a past president that did make the allusion that Nigerians were, even though that's not correct. But, Nigerians are not lazy. We work really hard. But the truth is, our health sometimes might fail. And that's why it's a pity, because it just goes to expose the lack of investment in healthcare. Even now, a lot of people have to pay out of pocket for healthcare. That's also a big problem. In some of the other countries.
Close to 80, about 80% of health expenditure is out of pocket.
Precisely. So, what is the insurance coverage rate in Nigeria? Very abysmal compared to those other African countries, or just countries around the world with higher life expectancy rates. So there are a lot of low-hanging fruits, things that we can easily address to ensure that we just change the tide here. But it would take concerted effort from the government. It would take the realization that you can't really have robust economic growth if you don't have a healthy population to actually do the work. Once that happens, then hopefully we start to see a change in our health fortunes.
And you see, there are so many dimensions to this dilemma. Because the health insurance enrollment is still very small, because health insurance really thrives on skill. Because it is small, cost per person is high, or the value of what you really get is much smaller than what you will be getting paying the same thing with a significantly higher health insurance enrollment. That's one problem. There is also the problem around the matter of the devaluation of the Naira. And I see that manifest in many, many ways. Take pension, for instance. A large portion of our people do not maintain any pension scheme, for instance. But even for the few who do have a pension scheme, if you retired 5 years ago on the basis of a contribution with Naira at 189 Naira a dollar, and today you have to buy things at $1 to 1,500 Naira, what kind of retirement are you going to have?
A very miserable one.
So for me, I like the point you make about out-of-pocket expenses, but if I have money in my pocket and the money is valuable, it doesn't really care whether I, transfer it, whether I take it out of my pocket to pay it, or whether I use insurance. But I see personally, my view is the devaluation, the mindless devaluation of the Naira over the years is perhaps the biggest problem of Nigeria, and especially the middle class in Nigeria.
Yes, because like you rightly said, it has just essentially weakened the purchasing power of the average Nigerian. When you look at the fact that the dollar was priced at around 150 in 2015, and today it's almost 1,500, even though we've seen some appreciation recently. But it's still pretty much very weak, and we've gone from a very low base to where we are today. The devaluation has really impacted households. So like you said, what the value of cash you have in your pension is not even sufficient to ensure that you have a good retirement at the end of the day. So it's really a big problem. And that's why you see that some of the pension funds have been trying to advocate for increased investment in things that can shield
but for me, that's just dancing around
but
the
even
edges.
that doesn't significantly correct the damage that's been wreaked by devaluation.
Yes.
And that's why, I mean, we're all excited that the central bank is now committed to orthodox monetary policy such that, you know, it's better able to manage the exchange rate in a way that we don't see the type of devaluation that we've seen in the past. Most people are even now looking that perhaps we might even start to see some appreciation towards a better level than the current level now.
I just believe that managing Nigeria's foreign exchange better is not just so we look good to the IMF. It's so that we can keep more and more of our people from dying as a result of poverty.
Precisely.
For me, that's huge. Dr. Adeosun, I'm glad you're able to join us now. You probably want to chime in.
Yes, but I didn't get the early part of the question. You may want to.
We're dealing with the problem of how devaluation of the Naira over the years has become a big issue, even when you are talking about the life expectancy of the people, whether it's about pension, about health insurance, or whatever. I have been, as you would imagine at my age, in many conversations lately, and people just sit down and they are talking so alarmingly about the quality of life they would have when they retire, when they cannot even cope now that they are working. What's going to happen to them when they retire?
Okay, absolutely. Let me just respond first by saying that I'm speaking to professionals generally, anybody who is on the pension schemes, that our pension cannot be our only hope post-retirement. Is going to be somewhat inadequate. Okay, so we need to also adopt other investment strategies and techniques, diversify real estate, stocks, options, mutual funds, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, make sure that you settle any kind of a liability you may have upfront. Try and secure a home or mortgage before you retire, or try and plan your life so that you don't have kids you are training post retirement, so that your burdens will be relatively lighter. The reality is
you know what I'm going to do next Monday. We are going to just dedicate this program to talking about life in retirement. What kind of life do we all hope to have when we retire? But Dr. Adeosun, continue.
Yeah. So, because pension cannot be adequate, it's not going to be enough. But all things being equal, by the time you're a pensioner, it also doesn't mean you have zero economic value. We've seen many people transition post-retirement to, for example, consultancy or some form of trading, some form of other businesses. The truth is, if you retire at 60 or 70, you may live till 95. 25 years is still a lot to live for. And that's why the story we raised earlier on Nigerians dying before their peers is concerning, because low life expectancy is not just about people dying early. It also means that we are losing out on the wisdom of the matured class, because by the time you are 55, you have a lot of insight, you have a lot of wisdom. Yes, you may not have physical strength, but you have intellectual capital and capacity to provide support for businesses and organizations. So we really need to work around it. Again, we should also improve our support. When I say support here, our diet, avoiding sedentary lifestyle, especially for people who are in the urban centers, city centers, better diet. Thankfully, last week we saw a red letter from the Minister of Health, focusing on disbursement of funds to the primary healthcare system. And I think kudos to the health minister, because this is the first time in a long time we are seeing announcements about amounts disbursed to the primary healthcare center.
Yeah.
Hopefully this will allow for better transparency and better quality of service, because sometimes by the time people are 50 something, don't forget that there are middle age crisis, diabetes, hypertension, and so on and so forth. The first thing is some people don't even get detected of this ailment on time. By the time they detect that they have this ailment, it has become chronic. You know, many Nigerians, sadly, we don't do annual health check. We live by faith, in quotes, until we fall down, we slump. They will now go and check our vitals. So we need to adopt and embrace preventive health techniques. Of course, I know the government can do more, but if we die, we first die for ourselves before we die on behalf of the government. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I just, you know, as you went on, Dr. Adeosun, something occurred to me. I mean, the people, I like all the point about avoiding sedentary lifestyle and all of that, but I still come to my major, if you like, thesis, which is the mindless devaluation of the Naira over the years has become the greatest undoing of the middle class in Nigeria. I have said that we will dedicate our meeting on Monday, our program on Monday, to just talking about this, because for me, it just comes to the value of the cash you have in your pocket. Even if you get an early diagnosis, do you have the money? When you don't pay out of, even if you don't want to pay out of pocket, do you have the money to subscribe to health insurance? And when you are in hospital, can you pay for, because you know, what its cost is, you go to an hospital, and the first question the doctor wants resolved is whether you are able to pay or not. Not about what your health situation is. So there's just this mindless thinking all across the broad spectrum, you know, and we've become like crabs, just pulling ourselves down. But Lalu, you have the, Lola, they have the final word before we close.
Yeah, what I'll say is it's important that, hopefully we get to talk about what the federal government is doing with technology to just improve block revenue leakages and all of that. It's important that there's more targeted investments, because these are social investments now in healthcare, just so that we change the narrative when it comes to average life expectancy, because it's really important. We need to reverse the tide of having to pay out of pocket for a host of other things. Hopefully, we don't have to continue down the road of the mindless evaluation that we've seen in the past, with better management of the foreign exchange market that we're seeing now. If all these factors come together, I imagine that the Nigerians will live longer than they currently do now.
Amen. Well, we will, on that note, bring today's edition of Business Week to an end. I hope you have, as we have in the studio, been thrilled by the conversation that we have had, whether it's about Nigeria exiting the grey list, or whether it's about the question of Nigerians dying much earlier before their age, or the very interesting conversation around the diesel rackets and racketeers in our homes and in our offices and in government. We will, at this point, take a leave of you, but don't stop watching. This is Business Day Television. See you 9 o'clock on Monday.